What up, everybody? It's Zane Donani with the Tight 10 again. This is crazy. We are finally at that point in time where we've got training camp, we've got news, we've got people that are actually doing things on a football field rather than just me reading every article under the sun with random speculation or trying to find a tidbit out of nowhere. Now we have actual video footage, and there's been a lot that has been covered. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right. I'm going to start from where I left off last time, which is going to go through July 22nd all the way to the 29th, which is just a buttload of information, but it's fine. So it sounds like Carson Beck is going to get a chance to start some games this season. I've talked about this plenty of times. Recent rookie third-round picks average around 190 pass yards and one touchdown and like one interception in a game. When you start to divvy that up amongst Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison, and Michael Wilson, and then also Jeremiah Love, that's going to bring the value down of those guys when the season is on the line. And I think that right after the bye week, week 14, 15 is right after the bye week, they play the Jets, they play the Saints, and they play the Raiders. That is the time you're going to see Carson Beck in there, because that the rest of the schedule before that is like incredibly hard. And so why not put Carson Beck in when the schedule gets light right after a bye? And that's exactly when is fantasy playoffs for most people. I am fading pretty much all of these players at their current cost. If they go down cheaper, like if McBride got to the fourth round or something, I would take him. But right now, I'm pretty much out. I have not drafted him at all. We had some more information and depth on Liam Cohen and what he had said about Parker Washington, and I think this episode in general is going to have a lot of Parker Washington information. But he's been developing a relationship with Trevor Lawrence on and off the field. Things you like to hear. I know ETR, shout out to ETR, who does the shower narrative. I feel like we've got that in play with Parker Washington and Trevor Lawrence. And basically the team, from Shipley's words, the guy that wrote the article, is all in on Parker Washington as an impact player. I know for me, there's a sample size of players that just haven't, who've had these like small spurts and have just not hit over time. But the caveat I have to say to that is that Parker Washington was 23 when he broke out last year. Okay. That's pretty early. That's about it's the age that Dejon Stribling is right now. It took him some time. He needed an opportunity. We had heard some good things in preseason for the past 2 years, to be quite honest. It took him some time to get that opportunity, and then he proved himself. There's a lot more on Parker Washington in here. I'm obviously a bull, especially given what his role is in the offense. Now, this is going to be a little bit more obsolete with later information, but The Athletic was talking about the RB2 competition for the 49ers, and basically Jordan James has to hold off Kalen Black. Kalen Black, the 49ers had on their draft board as the RB2 in the class, so that would be above a guy like Jadarian Price. But it's going to be a training camp battle. And I've said this plenty of times, but I think I would choose Jordan James. One, he's going to have the initial shot, and then because he is the veteran. And then two, I just think that for a guy like Kalen Black, whose profile hasn't shown much pass catching and other things like that, I think you get a 1 year kind of like bogey a lot of times when you don't have that in your profile, where, okay, you haven't shown it, that doesn't mean you can't do it. Doesn't mean you can't grow that specific skill set, but it does mean that it might take you a minute. It might take the team a minute to say, hey, we're going to give you that opportunity. Now, Jordan James, which I just read probably 20 seconds before going on this, has fractured ribs. He's going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. That gives Kalen Black a little bit more opportunity, but 2 to 3 weeks isn't even getting you to the season. I still think that Jordan James is going to be able to win this battle. I'm taking him in the last round of best ball drafts. I think that the handcuff for this specific backfield is immense value overall. I do quote tweet people. I retweet people whenever I like what they have to say. You guys can always follow with my alerts, put notifications on. You might hate yourself at the end of the day, but you can put notifications on and see if you like it. Moving forward, the insider pod from July 22nd. Carson Beck might be in the best position of all rookie quarterbacks to get on the field soonest. Jacoby Brissett still projected as the week 1 starter, but Beck has a solid shot to be the quarterback late in the season. We just talked about it. It's probably going to happen. There's really no reason for them to not try that, especially if the season's going poorly. Their schedule really doesn't look like they can win more than 3 or 4 games in their first 14, in their first 13. So they're going to be in a really bad spot. And then after that, you want to tank. A guy like Jacoby Brissett just like elevates the bar a little bit. You get a chance to look at your rookie quarterback. I'm concerned about drafting Cardinals players for the last couple weeks of the season. The Insider Pod talked about Zach Charbonnet. Rehab's going really, really well. We'll be back before the halfway point of the season. And I said this, week 8 is 10/25, which is like 8 months post-op. It's extremely fast, I think. And then there's been further reports since then. I think Breer said something about, hey, chance for week 1. I think that would be insane. I would bet highly against all of that. But everything we keep hearing is the timeline keeps like shifting up a little bit. I think safely, given all the information that we've heard, a November timeline seems very safe, which means that he's back and probably fully up to speed before the fantasy playoffs, which happens, I think, like mid-December, late December, right? Depending on your league. So, if you have an IR spot, this is a guy that could do some stuff for you. In best ball leagues, very live for the end of the season. Sometimes it's hard to take zeros. For Eliminator, this guy it's going to be hard to draft. But yeah, he's very viable, and he takes away from Jadarian Price because he's like a coach's son in terms of what you read about him. Mike McDonald lights up when he talks about Zach Charbonnet. It's very similar to Dave Canales with Chuba Hubbard. So you have to think about what that means. I think that means the touchdown opportunities, the pass protection, the pass receiving work, and from everything that I read as well, and we're going to get to it in a little bit, they feel very similarly with George Holani. That doesn't mean Jadarian Price is bad. It just means that Jadarian Price may not get that full opportunity that everybody's hoping for. And that's why I want Jadarian Price to fall a little bit. All right. Speaking of which, Jadarian Price, Insider Pod, July 22nd, they discuss his workload. They say it's hard to imagine him being a bell cow. They say similar to the Kenneth Walker versus Charbonnet split is what they're kind of assuming, that there's going to be a committee approach. And I see that. I see that. I mean, his skill set coming out of college, you can see all the videos of him catching passes. It's not about him catching passes. It's having the full responsibility. It's having the full responsibility that a running back has to have in the pass game. Okay, it's not just running a route. It is chipping, releasing, knowing when to release, being relied upon to pick up blitzers. All of that goes together because then you're not tipping off anything, right? Like Jadarian Price leaking out for a pass. Like if that's all he's going to do, if he's not going to be doing pass protection, then you're giving something up, right? And so I think that George Holani is going to be involved. It's really just a matter of how involved. Is it going to be 40% of the reps? Is it going to be 30%? Is it going to be 20%? Do I think George Holani is some immense talent? No, I don't. I do think that him being a UDFA and sticking on this roster for as long as he has and having shown some stuff in like preseason and the team willing to trust him in Super Bowl and everything is valuable. It's more just that, is this enough to just hold Jadarian Price away from significant value? And I think that's where I'm leaning because then you get the late season thing with Charbonnet, which we just talked about. Insiders Pod also talked about the Jaguars running back and called it a running back by committee for Bashal Tutin and Chris Rodriguez. And again, we know this. We already know that this is going to be a committee. Chris Rodriguez is going to get work. Bashal Tutin's going to get work. The answer is that we don't know what the split is. And then on top of that, we have to build in what situation do we get the big boom out of the two players? And I don't think that we get the big boom with Chris Rodriguez. I think we get the big boom with Pearsall Tootin. If he hits, we can see him be like a second or first round value type of player if he hits. Chris Rodriguez, I believe he's going like round 11 right now. Might be ticking up after today, just given the fact that we saw him on a football field. Can he bring round 7 value? Can he bring round 6 value, round 5 value in a really good season? Yes, he could do something like that. But I think if you're talking about who can bring you the league-winning value, it's going to be Pearsall Tootin. And so that's where I sit in this argument. And that doesn't mean I'm not taking Chris Rodriguez ever. I think there's a time and a place to do it. But I am betting on the film that I watched where I thought that Pearsall Tootin looked very good on film last year, especially in zone blocking situations. Insider Pod also mentioned Travis Hunter will play both ways. We're going to get an update on that today, too. He actually did practice both ways in the first training camp practice. We're probably going to see him more on defense. That's what happened at training camp today, since wide receiver is stronger for the team. I might skip some things that are going to be redundant given the fact that there's more information that has come out more recently. Insider Pod was talking about Stephon Diggs. Hey, they're surprised that he's still available. He should sign soon. This was a week ago. They say a team in Washington, D.C. could use someone like Diggs. So again, D.C. being linked, the Commanders being linked to Diggs. This just keeps happening. It's Schefter, Fowler, insiders. There's another one from today where John Keim wrote it in ESPN and said, hey, there's a spot. Could they add Stephon Diggs? I think we may see that happen within the next couple of days. Sometimes these teams like to wait, get their guys in, see what it looks like, and then bring somebody in. It could also be a contract thing. It could also be Diggs just waiting. Like Ricky Pearsall could be injured for a long time, and now there's an opportunity for Diggs to get a contract with the 49ers instead. We'll see. I do think that it's very likely he's on the Commanders. Insider Pod also mentioned that Isaiah Likely could be a top target for Jackson Dart this year. I think he'll be a top 2 target for him without a doubt. Nabers and Isaiah Likely, those are the 2 guys. Insider Pod also was speculating, Kenneth Walker will be running the ball and catching a lot out of the backfield. And it said, I'm sure Andy Reid is thinking about him as Brian Westbrook 2.0. Again, Andy Reid, before his most recent running back situation with Isaiah Pacheco and that cluster, Kareem Hunt, Damian Williams, Jamal Charles, LaShawn McCoy, Brian Westbrook, all were incredible fantasy assets in the past. Could he get back to that? Everything that I read keeps saying they may want to go back to a little bit more of a rushing scheme and do more West Coast type of stuff. So that means running the ball a decent amount and then doing dump off passes like quick pass game, which all favors the running back. I am buying the Kenneth Walker situation. I think the hardest thing with the Kenneth Walker situation, to be quite honest, is that there's just, I could build this exact same story for so many players in that same cluster. I could build it for Omarion Hampton. I could build it for Saquon Barkley, James Cook, Ashton Jeanty. There's so much in that same spot that you're basically playing hot potato as to who the right one is. And it might just end up being who stays healthy out of all of them, right? Moving on. Packers expert believes the wide receiver rotation will be more streamlined. I agree. I think now this is something that's been consistently reported across many different platforms that I keep seeing. I am reading that they want to go with more tempo, that they want to implement a situation where they have, and when we say tempo, I mean they want to play faster. And if they want to play faster, that means that they can't sub players, because if they sub players, then they're playing slower again, because then the defense has to rotate guys out, or has the opportunity to rotate guys out. Which means, and I'm also hearing that they want to do more 11 personnel, which means Jayden Reed will be on the field more often. And so will Golden, and so will Christian Watson. I think we're going to see a different team this year in a lot of ways. I think they're going to pass the ball more, especially the early part of the season where they have Micah Parsons probably sitting out for at least 5 games, based off of what I've read. And then I think that they want to place more on to Jordan Love and have him be more in control of the offense, throw the ball a little bit more in general. So now we're saying guys that were getting 70% route shares or even 65% if you're talking about like a Jaden Reed, we're talking these guys might get close to 75, 80%. And then on top of that, there's more play volume because they're playing faster. And then on top of that, they're going to throw the ball more. I think someone in this Packers offense from a pass catching perspective is going to be a really big value. If I were to bet, I think it'll be Jaden Reed, but or Tucker Kraft. I wouldn't bet as much on the other two. But yeah, I think it's good to take flyers on all 4 options, because if they play a different way, it's very possible this all works out for one of them in fantasy very well. We don't need to cover this in detail. Aaron Wilson had a podcast where he talked about Joe Mixon, and he said, hey, he told former Bengals teammates that his career is likely over. This one went viral. This is probably my most viral tweet ever. So, and when I did it, I was like shaking a little bit because I thought that it could like break the internet, but I wasn't sure. So, whatever. He also said that David Montgomery is the clear RB1 and they want to throw him the football in that same podcast. So there's just been like mixed reports around like what the split is between Woody Marks and Joe Mixon. He even said that like there was maybe a different podcast where they said Jane Slater kind of like walked back her quote about it being like a 50-50 split or whatever it is that she said. I still think this is going to be like heavily leaned on David Montgomery based off of everything that I've read. And then the insiders that I kind of trust from the Houston side, but I've been wrong on some stuff before. And on Tank Dell, which we've gotten more information on, I'm going to skip him right now. This was interesting. The Jets running back room, Rich Cimini, basically saying that Isaiah Davis is live to be the third down back and the RB2 over Braylon Allen. Says all 3 running backs will be involved in some way. And now we have 2 of the biggest beats, ESPN, Rich Cimini, and then Zach Rosenblatt, that basically say that Isaiah Davis is live for RB2. Braylon Allen still gets drafted in a lot of leagues, and Isaiah Davis does not. I think this is a really good opportunity if you want to have the handcuff type of situation, especially the one that has the pass catching chops, to invest in Isaiah Davis if you think that this Jets offense can be something, or that a handcuff in that offense is worth something. I kind of do. Maybe something to mix in. And that wasn't a pun based off of Joe Mixon. Eagles insider Kaplan, I'm blanking on what his first name is. I think it's Andrew Kaplan. Basically said he just doesn't think that Eli Stowers will play much this season. Says that Grant Calcaterra is the Y backup. This is very consistent with everything that I've read as well. I do think that there's an opportunity maybe if Dallas Goedert got injured, but even then, Dallas Goedert's going to get like 80% of the snaps because he can play inline and he can stretch out. If Goedert gets hurt, that stretch out role, maybe that's where you see Eli fit into that. But what is that, like 30%? 40% of the routes coming from there, and I don't think that they're going to put him in line like almost ever. So I'm a little skeptical as to how big his upside can actually be in that situation, especially now that they drafted Mekhi Lemon, who profiles as a slot only player. They're obviously going to want to prioritize getting him on the field. I see a world where if Mekhi Lemon got hurt, there's a chance for Eli to get more work, but that might actually be his better play, is if Mekhi Lemon got hurt. So I'm just completely out on Eli for this season specifically. In the future, I think he has a lot of opportunities, but for now, I think we should not bet on it. Seahawks running backs are basically all in the mix for RB1. Coaches like what they've seen out of George Halani, which I keep reading. I think the coaches really like him in general. And they could see 2 to 3 running backs involved. again, we'll talk more about that in a second, but I feel pretty good about this one. Benson Ben Sinnott gets the biggest opportunity increase in the David Blau offense, which will play a lot of 12 and 13 personnel. Keep hearing this. And so Ben Sinnott, a guy that could hit in some way, like let's just say the Chig thing, we've seen him, right? We've seen him. He's always been a 50% route share guy. I think, and they've talked really highly of Chig, but sometimes random things happen, right? You don't know how good a guy like Ben is. And maybe Chig, we've seen it, and he's just okay. He's not an elite player by any means. At the very least, what I think with Ben is that he's going to get a lot of playing time. Maybe not a bad dynasty asset just to see how things go. It's hard to find talented tight ends. A lot of people liked him out of college, and he just never really got the opportunity. Didn't mix well with what Cliff Kingsbury wanted to do. So here's his chance, and there's worse bets you can make. There was a lot on the Mixon stuff that ended up happening. If you do like this pod, like, subscribe, share with people. It's called The Cut Up on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. You can find me. I'm in the streets everywhere, basically, right now. All right. Moving on to, I do some reposts with some of my content that I do late at night so that people see it in the morning. So if you do get annoyed by that, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody's getting a chance to see some of the stuff that I post at nighttime, because I'm doing tweet storms at like midnight, and then you wake up and it's like, oh, I don't know what happened. And then it's like, okay, 7:00 in the morning, let's just start retweeting some of those things. Yeah, there's a report on Tyreek Hill. It basically, to me, reads like he's just not going to play football this year. I don't think that it's likely. Not somebody you want to draft. I don't know that it even makes sense to have him in Dynasty, though. I wouldn't necessarily get rid of him. Let time pass, see exactly what we hear, but it just doesn't sound good at the moment. All right. I've been catching people up too. I did a podcast with Theo Greminger on RotoWire. It was awesome. We talked about Kenneth Walker, his featured role, other stuff like that. Go check that out as well. Like, subscribe. Theo's an absolute animal. The one guy that I told him this too, said, hey man, you are in every single draft format ever. You name it, he's in it. All right. Moving on. We see that Tet McMillan was participating in practice. This is kind of getting irrelevant, but he missed OTAs with a foot injury. It's good to hear that he was participating. I'm still paying attention to training camp, just making sure, is he staying out there? Is he sitting any days because of his foot? Something that I'm still a little bit scared of, because at any point in time, you could be like, hey, there's a stress fracture or something. It came out of nowhere for Rome last year. I'm just worried about these bigger bodied receivers and how those things can come up. Tua said that Zachariah Branch reminds him of Jalen Waddle. I don't agree with that, but I do think of it as a signal for, hey, this guy's pretty talented. I see talent in this guy. Maybe I'll be able to trust him. Tua's going to be the quarterback to start the season. It seems like very likely that that's the case. So I just take it as like a little bit of a signal, like, hey, this guy's like building a relationship with Zachariah Branch. Rashad Bateman's going to be the wide receiver 2 for the Ravens. I keep saying this. I think people are writing him off. I still think that he's a talented receiver when he's healthy. The problem is that he's never healthy. So let's see where things go with him. I'm paying attention to the chat. I will get to the questions from the chat at the very end so that I can get through all of this. And whenever if people are listening to this as a podcast, I don't want them to get bogged down with like, hey, this person in the chat was asking this question. So I apologize. That's just the best format that I've found works. Ravens wide receiver 3 battle, one to watch in training camp: Devontae Walker, Jacoby Lane, Elijah Surratt. They're all live for the role. I think that Surratt will eventually win the role. The reason why I think that is, there's a couple of different things here. Coach Speaking Index did a really good job of putting together every single piece of information that the coaches and GM have said about Devontae Walker which I think has now changed, but it was basically zero things that were said about him this entire offseason. Doesn't mean that doesn't mean that they don't like him. But what I will say is that I've seen a lot more on Elijah Surratt and Jacoby Lane. Whoop, I hit a light. Uh, and so the one thing that I keep thinking through here is how the fit between the players that they have in are going to work. I see Devontae Walker as a better fit for a Rashad Bateman role. That like kind of like X receiver who does a lot of the deep threat stuff, and that's kind of what he does. So I think of him as like Rashad Bateman's backup. Now they may end up putting him in anyway and maybe try to change some of what Rashad Bateman does and put him in a different like Z or something position. The team is expected to do a lot more three wide receiver sets this season based off of their personnel. But I don't think that Devontae Walker fits as well as like an Elijah Surratt or Jacoby Lane, who are more short and intermediate types of players. It doesn't mean they don't start the season with Devontae Walker out there, but I think that what will end up happening is they will eventually figure this out on the field where the fit just doesn't make sense. And if Rashad Bateman gets hurt, then one of these two guys is going to get elevated anyway because they're in a three wide receiver set. But I do think Walker's skill set is more geared towards a duplicative type of thing to Rashad Bateman. So I'm more into Elijah Surratt than I am probably anybody else. But if you like Jacoby Lane, nobody has like insider info on which one is going to be the guy just yet. So if you like Jacoby Lane, feel free to draft him too. Bills wide receiver 3, again, I think this is an avoid for redraft. It sounds like it's just gonna be, like, some sort of mix of dudes between Keon Coleman, Skylar Bell. They could sign Brandon Cooks. That name has come up, like, in 3 different articles that I've seen, from ESPN and other sources. And then Joshua Palmer, who's, like, a roster bubble guy. Tyrell Shavers is gonna be on PUP, but he can come back during the middle of the season. Yeah, I'm gonna avoid that wide receiver 3 right now. If I was gonna draft one, it would be Skylar Bell. From a dynasty angle, I think that also makes sense because, DJ Moore is gonna hit that age cliff. Like, it could be this year, it could be 2 years from now, who knows? But very least, like, if Skylar Bell works himself into that wide receiver 3 role, maybe he's just good. And maybe he's good at football and he does really well and has a chance to do something amazing. So that's the only guy that I'm really willing to bet on. Keon Coleman, like completely out on. Um, Josh Palmer, I'm basically completely out on as well. And Brandon Cooks is, he's Brandon Cooks, so I'm not really into him. There was an article that said that Ben Johnson is basically going to try to do more designing of plays for Caleb Williams to hit his primary read. He was basically one of the worst quarterbacks in the league with first read rate last year. So it would behoove them to be able to do that because what would end up happening is that's going to make the offensive timing work better. It's going to get the ball out of Caleb's hands quicker, and it'll likely turn into a higher completion rate, touchdowns, moving the ball, efficiency, everything will probably work out better if you're able to hit your first read more often. Doesn't have to be all the time. Like the best quarterbacks aren't at the top of that list, but I think what you get is a situation where you need to be above certain thresholds, and he's not even close. So I had the opportunity to sit down with Matt Harmon and do training camp stories, which now we're starting to get those stories to come in. But this was pretty much an experience of a lifetime. I've never had producers in my ear telling me like, "Hey, oh, you got to do this or that." This was a production. This was like being on TV almost. And I've seen the behind the scenes production stuff before working at ESPN. Um, and it was just really cool. So go ahead and check that out. If you like it, comment on it. Um, give the feedback. If you want me back on there, they're probably they I think it's more likely they would bring me back on there if people were to say, "Hey, that was really good." If that was bad, give me the feedback too. I want to know. I'm trying to get better at all of this. This is my I haven't spent that much time in front of the camera before. We're all, catching up on the Malik Nabers stuff. There's more on him today. I'm not even going to touch on the old stuff anymore on him. Um, Dave Canales had some quotes on Chris Brazzell. We'll get to Chris Brazzell again later, but he was basically saying, "Hey, he's a deep threat, and what he does is allow Tet and Coker and Leggett to operate in shorter roles, which I say is good for fantasy." So it sounded like Brazzell had a chance to earn playing time. Then he got hurt today. He had knee soreness coming into today, and then he practiced, and then he buckled his knee, and there's like a I don't know if it was an LCL strain or something like that, but he's going to be out for 8 weeks, which kind of extends into the early parts of the season, and not good for a rookie to miss time. So we'll talk about that again maybe a little bit later, but I think that hurts Tet's opportunity to play in the slot because it sounded like they don't really want Xavier Legette to be that deep guy anymore. He has struggled a lot doing it, and now they're going to need Tet to maybe play that a little bit more instead of putting him in the slot, which is unfortunate. Jonathan Brooks, great first practice, breaking some pop plays. There's some quotes from Canales talking about how fast and strong he looks. We've got more on Jonathan Brooks here in a minute, so I'll keep you as updated as possible on that. On Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt from John Keim of ESPN. Again, improvement in the pass game will be key. He offers more potential explosiveness in the run game. Every beat is basically saying like, "Hey, this Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Bill, whatever you want to call him, he needs to prove it as a pass protector and pass catcher, but he is their most explosive runner." So it sounds like they want him to be the running back, but he needs to prove it. This is his second year. Obviously, we talk about guys like Kalen Black and Jadarian Price and whoever else, and it's like, hey, they don't have the pass catching background. They don't have the pass protection background. Well, that's year one. Year two, you get another opportunity to show yourself. You had some time to practice it. You watched film. Pass protection is half like IQ and it's half physical ability. And maybe the IQ place is there, and then Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt put on 7 to 8 pounds and has the ability to do it. I'm not going to write a guy off because I do think that these are skills that can be learned, even if they're not like great at it. Could they be adequate at it? Could it be something that they are good enough to where the team's like, all right, yeah, we can trust this guy. We'll see. There's going to be more information on how practice went today for the Commanders, and I'll be able to get that information to you guys. Eric All, and there's another one from today, and I think from others. But basically, people believe that he is the key to the offense, and the key to the offense meaning like X factor type of key. Because he's versatile, he can block and catch passes at the tight end position, which is unique to their tight end room. Um, Basically, they believe that he creates a situation where they can have a believable situation where the team doesn't know the opposing team doesn't know if they're running or passing the ball, and it unlocks play action for the team. I'm sure they could go sign other tight ends and do the same thing. Um, but this is the guy that they're hitching their wagon to. And from all reports, it sounds like he's healthy and that he's going to play that role in the offense. That doesn't mean he's going to be fantasy relevant. It probably means that he's just going to make Mike Gesicki less fantasy relevant, to be quite honest. Camp battle, 3-man committee waiting for Sharps for Seahawks running back. You're gonna if you're listening to this, you're gonna get like the progression of where things have gone for the Seahawks running back room. Um, so the Seahawks are high on George Holani. A good chunk of the work will also go to Jadarian Price. I think this is real. I think they're going to be doing kind of a mix of stuff, especially early in the season, and then whoever's doing well will take over more of the work. But I do think that Holani will probably have the pass down work because the team trusts him in that situation right now, and that's okay. Um, Maybe there's an opportunity if he got hurt for Jadarian Price to take on more. Guy Lemon is at OTA is at training camp. He had an hamstring injury that bothered him during OTAs, so it's good to hear that he's back. Um, they're saying that he'll be the starting slot in 3 wide receiver sets. I think what we're most interested in is who's going to start in 2 wide receiver sets between him and Dontavian Wicks. And I think that the answer can be Mekhi Lemon, but we're just not 100% sure just yet. All right, guys. Let's see. Steelers backfield, we don't know if Caleb Johnson or Eli Heidenreich are going to make the team. A lot of people, because of the third round draft capital, think that Caleb Johnson will make it. I just think that he doesn't have a special teams role, and at least Heidenreich has the profile of like he could do something on special teams, like gadgety stuff, or can you just slot him in as like a fifth receiver / running back? Like, I think it's 50-50, really. If you talk to Steelers fans, they'll probably tell you it's probably Caleb, but I like my read. If I was the GM, it would be pretty 50-50. And I don't know if that I would keep 4 running backs. So Yeah, so I'm a little bit worried about this Eagles offensive line. Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens both had some stem cell treatment for their back issues this offseason. And I don't know. I was talking to a doctor about this, and they basically were saying like, "Hey, that's not something you want to see. It can help, but it's more so just like prolonging and make like things can pop back up, right?" And so the fact that they need this to be able to get over what they're dealing with is just like a subsiding of pain situation almost, and that this can pop up again. So I am worried about this Eagles offensive line, especially because there's some age to it as well. Not everybody's super old, but like Lane Johnson, he wasn't listed here, but Lane Johnson is getting pretty old. Some of these guys have considered retiring recently as well. If the season goes the wrong way, I'm afraid for that. I'm actually afraid for the Eagles in general this season. And I'm a Cowboys fan, so I think that that's a little bit taboo. But I'm just thinking like offensive scheme overhaul, something that's been thought of as unnatural for Jalen Hurts. Also controversial that it's make or break for Jalen Hurts. You know, you don't usually say that about a Super Bowl winning quarterback, especially one who probably could have won Super Bowl MVP like twice. Um, you know, he fumbled, I think, in the one that they lost to the Chiefs, but he was playing phenomenal that game. I just, I think if you watch the film, like there's just so many times where you're left sitting there like, why is he not activating the middle of the field? Why is he not able to do this? Why is he like he's just not the passer that he's not a great passer. He's probably below average as a passer, but then his legs and the tush push, all of those things have pushed him over the top. I'm very interested to see how things go this season. And then, you know, again, key line pieces are on their last legs. There's also pressure on Nick Sirianni, which was written about in the Athletic. And then they have Lemon and Wicks and not AJ Brown. So it's just like there's different things coming into play. Um, Again, it could all hit and they could go to the NFC Championship game, but it could also all fall apart. And I could see that happening. And then, hey, now we're thinking about trading Jalen Hurts or not re-upping him, and then Nick Sirianni's gone. Stuff like that. Jonathan Brooks had several first team reps, but so did Trevor Etienne. This is from like the first practice, basically. He's expected to be a regular contributor in the backfield. Again, Jonathan Brooks, it's just a matter of health with him right now. Yeah. So this was Jeff Mueller talking about the offensive line and these guys carrying like 280 to 330 plus pounds, absorbing a ton of force and try to push backwards, bend you, break you, and cells can only help so much. So yes, the Philly O line is a big concern moving forward, not only for the sustainability for 2026, but for dynasty purposes. He says Cleveland O line was a great example of stellar play at one point, and then it all just kind of fell off to injuries and age. That could easily happen. They also got rid of their O line coach Jeff Stoutland, who is kind of like known in the industry as like a Hall of Fame ish type of offensive line coach. So um, that's another situation to watch. Also changing like run blocking schemes to zone blocking, so stuff that these guys haven't been doing over time. Um, Again, there's some speculation on James Cook being more involved in the pass game. We've heard in the past how Pete Carmichael could influence running back usage. The breakdown, you know, of how they might do this, they basically said, hey, this could be just involving the screen game more, and who knows if that's James Cook, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis in general. But from my perspective, you know, I keep hearing a lot of, hey, James Cook might get activated in this part of the game. They may take away some of his rushing attempts. Rushing attempts are obviously like direct contact. Um, Running routes is not direct contact, so that would be a good way to like take the load off of him a little bit. But it would be better for his fantasy value too, especially if those rushes are between the 20s. I'm not going to cover this in too much detail. Not worth it. So Bears Insider basically said, "Hey, Ben Johnson doesn't really praise guys, but he did tell us to buy Luther Burden stock, and he felt that it was a stock tip." Anyway, I found that interesting just because I'm very interested in that Bears running back or sorry receiver room. Again, on Eric All, going to be a big part of the offense if he can survive camp. Again, this is just going to make the Bengals tight end room a tricky situation for any like deep league, best ball, whatever situations. Quinshon Judkins expected to be a full go at the start of training camp. He was a full go today. Didn't tweet about it yet, but yeah, he was full go today, so that's great. NFL Live talked about Stephon Diggs. 5 teams checked in on him. He might wait to sign when teams are reporting or wait for an injury. The names mentioned again were Washington and Baltimore. Another report later on in this was that Baltimore is no longer interested in veteran wide receiver. So it sounds like it's probably not going to be Diggs to Baltimore. Here's that schedule I was talking about with Carson Beck, where it's like, hey, they play the Chargers, and then they play Seattle, and then they play San Fran, and then the Giants. Okay, fine, they can win the Giants game. And then the Lions, then the Rams, then the Broncos, then the Cowboys on the road, then Seattle on the road, then the Rams, then Kansas City, and then Washington, and then Philly. Like, how many of those games are they actually going to win? I think that they're like, sure, they could surprise in a couple. Like, maybe they beat the Cowboys, though. Cowboys have their, yeah, yeah. I just think that this is setting up to be a really bad situation. You're going to see Carson Beck definitely play. And this, if I was the coach, I would hold out till this part of the season to put him in, because this is when this might be the Manning Bowl against the Jets, and this is when you get an opportunity to put him in against competition that's not as hard. So you get a real read on him a little bit, instead of just throwing him to the Wolves against a Philly defense or a Kansas City defense or a Rams defense or a Seahawks defense or a Broncos defense. Like, it's just the season doesn't have like a natural point to put him in. So that's how I would think about it. Texans. This is from John McClain, who is a Texans beat, but he says Lee Marks and David Montgomery split. Was that comment was not fully legit? More context from Texans All Access Pod, who said it was walked back a bit by Jane Slater. So Jane Slater walked that comment back a little bit. Kendre Miller expected to start training camp on PUP. He did, because we've got those updates now. Again, he's in a running back battle. I'm intrigued by Kendre Miller because he could definitely get released and end up on a different roster. And I still think that he's talented, even though he can't stay healthy. Maybe a dynasty stash situation. I'm going to skip anything on Malik Nabers because we've got a bigger thing on him later. Yeah, this is me just reposting things at night again because I want to make sure other people see them, and don't gloss past it when I am doing stuff. James Conner and Trey Benson were not on the PUP and are full go. They have updates on them too, but basically Trey Benson finally participated in practice. James Conner is not participating in practice just yet. This was speculative on Xavion Thomas. Xavion. I'm gonna get better at saying these names. I need to like watch them say their own names. It might take time, to use Courtney's words, Courtney Cronin, the ESPN writer, for Xavion Thomas to get playing time, but very cool to hear potential gadget deployment in the backfield or wide receiver. So from my angle, something I'm paying attention to is what's happening with him in camp reports. We saw that DJ Moore was used as a running back at times at the beginning of the season last year before they trusted Kamanungai just to spell DJ Moore. Could Xavier Thomas get the exact same type of role? I think that's possible. I think this is a dynasty asset that you just hold on to, just because reports have been pretty strong about him. And Ben Johnson's offense, you want to have stuff in that. Let's just say Rome Odunze's foot is actually not good, and let's just say that doesn't work out great for him. Is there a role for a Xavier Thomas at some point this season, or even later in the season, or maybe Luther Burden gets injured and they need to have somebody that has a similar type of skill set where they're dynamic and in the run after catch situation? Who knows? We've seen players come out of nowhere plenty of times. Game breaking speed, I think that's a good thing to potentially bet on as a late asset. Tet was live for slot reps, and now I think that's less likely to happen given the fact that Chris Brazzell is going to miss time. I'm going to skip J.K. Dobbins information. On Bucky Irving and Kenneth Gainwell, the goal is to reduce Bucky's workload so he can be more efficient. The Pewter Report truly believes this is a 1A, 1B. Again, I've been out on Bucky. I think that this is one of those situations where there's a lighter workload without pass catching and goal line. So it just seems very similar to J.K. Dobbins. Like, hey, maybe he gets 15 rushing attempts in a game, but like none of those are the high value like opportunities. I could see that happening because I think Sean Tucker is still live to be the goal line back, and I think Kenneth Gainwell is just clearly going to be that pass catching back. Um, Now then it's like, hey, does Bucky get any pass catching or not? I mean, he showed that he could do it. Um, so I'm skeptical of that role being valuable if he's in that role from based off of his cost, obviously. Patrick Mahomes fully cleared. He practiced today. That's great. Rasheed Rice fully practicing. He was cleared. Everything's good there. I'm gonna skip that because that's just me pontificating about stuff. Short-term pup for J.C. Latham, who is an offensive lineman for the Titans. I still don't like that because I want this Titans offensive line to be in a good place for the season. And I'm worried that they won't be, and that's the reason why I'm betting heavily on Wandale as opposed to Carnell Tate. I keep talking about that. I also did a podcast with Matthew Friedman on fantasy life. Fantasy football is life. Go check that out. Like and subscribe their stuff too. I might be on there a little bit more often coming up soon as well. I was on with Theo Greminger. No limits on Patrick Mahomes. Top skill players are Kenneth Walker, Rasheed Rice, Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelsey, and Tyquan Thornton. Tyquan Thornton's a starter for this team, guys. So just prepare your mind whenever you see those deep balls. He's going to be the guy that's going to be doing a lot of that. I'm going to skip defensive stuff too because that's just me like being interested in some of the especially Cowboys defensive stuff. The Dallas podcast, DLLS podcast. The Cowboys want for Jaden Blue to be the guy who gets 10 reps a game. I don't know if 10 reps meant touches. They didn't really expand on that context, but basically that means to me like they want him to be a complementary piece. They just need him to show it, right? So we're going to see what ends up happening. The feedback that comes out of training camp is going to be huge from Oxnard, California, where they have their training camp. I've been there. It was awesome. Speculative, but if Marshawn Lloyd is not good in preseason, the Packers could look for a veteran free agent. And Aaron Nagler mentioned the Cardinals running backs, which I think that one of those two are likely going to not be on the team. My bet would be Trey Benson, but we'll see. Mike Washington is the definite RB2 handcuff to Ashton Jeanty based off of everything that I've read. There's another report that was confirming this. This one was from the Las Vegas Journal. There's another one that was probably from a different publication. I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a podcast from Stephen Hagland, the Chargers, guilty as charged. He was talking about like the RB2 battle for the Chargers and, just like, is there a battle between Kamani Vidal and Keaton Mitchell? And he was basically saying like, this is something to pay attention to. A lot of people are just assuming Keaton Mitchell is going to be this like RB2, but he's basically saying like, Kamani Vidal looked good last year. Also, he's a bigger back. Like he has the opportunity to do something himself that's different than what Keaton Mitchell can do. And can they really trust Keaton Mitchell to be like an every down running back? So my perspective, and I think other people's perspectives, are that Kamani Vidal is like the direct handcuffed to Omar Hampton. Sorry, Omar and Hampton. And Keaton Mitchell is like his own kind of like scat role in and of itself. Matthew Collar does a lot of Viking stuff, and he was saying that TJ Hawkinson's performance in 2025 was not great, but a lot of it came back to his low ADOT because he was asked to chip and release a lot with O-line struggling, and something that he may not have to do in 2026. So some context there if you're looking into a TJ Hawkinson Bull situation. Darius Slayton avoided the PUP after missing OTAs. Coach Harbaugh is optimistic that he will be ready for training camp. He is ready for training camp. I still think he's a viable round 18 dart throw. I'm going to skip anything Malik Nabers related for now. Speculation, but George Kittle to start training camp on the PUP. He did start training camp on the PUP. Again, he's still ahead of schedule and unsure if the team will want him to play week 1 given the travel to and from Australia. Both Bucky and Kenneth Gainwell are able to be run-pass game options. So they present the same type of threat, so that gives them the opportunity to keep both fresh and then ride the hot hand within a game. And I think that is actually what's going to end up happening this season based off of what I have heard. It sounds like Aaron Donald is probably going to come back to the Rams, but that hasn't necessarily been fully fleshed out yet. I'm going to skip some things that I think are less relevant. Man, I have so many things. It's ridiculous, actually. All right. Yeah, no major commanders were on PUP, so that's great. Trey Benson liked that tweet that said, hey, maybe like one of those Cardinals running backs will end up being on the Packers. Yeah, that was the real Trey Benson, actually. I like Kayshon Boutte, by the way. He's had and there will be more tweets on this, but he's had a really good training camp so far. Pretty much every single day, he's been a standout. He is working in with the first team. He's even working in with the first team with AJ Brown at the same time. He is lining up at the X in those situations, so he's still going to be the deep threat role in those. He has worked in the slot too. They've put him at Z a little bit, but it's not like it. It feels like they really want him to be the X so that they can move AJ Brown around and then sometimes Romeo Doubs as well into the Z and slot. So anyway, my thought process here is he either gets traded and he's going to go to a situation where he's probably moving up in pecking order from wide receiver 3 to maybe rotational wide receiver 3 to wide receiver 3 and like locked in, or to wide receiver 2, or even a chance at wide receiver 1 if he got traded to the Raiders or something. So I think he's a good dart throw in the last round of best ball drafts right now, because it seems like he is still doing really well on the deep ball stuff with Drake May, and they seem to have a good rapport. If you're doing a stack, if you drafted Drake May, he's not a bad option at the end. He's basically free in drafts right now. Eli Raridan, I've got a couple on him. He's plugging in at tight end 2 for the Patriots. It sounds like he is working with the first team and the second team, just kind of rotating in 12 personnel. He's with the first team. Obviously, as tight end 2, he's going to be with the second team whenever they're in 11 personnel, 1 tight end situations. Jim Wyatt, who covers the Titans, basically said that Wan'Dale Robinson is going to catch a lot of passes. And again, he says that he's the one that he would take in fantasy. I also agree. I think that this offense is going to have to throw the ball quickly because their offensive line is not very good. And that should be good for Wan'Dale Robinson as opposed to Carnell Tate. I have allergies, so I keep touching my nose. I apologize, guys. Sounds like Ricky Pearsall is going to start, but I have an update on Ricky Pearsall, so I'm going to skip that. But basically, every wide receiver spot is up for grabs other than Mike Evans' spot. Jaguars tried to deploy Brian Thomas as a 3-level threat to start 2025, and they altered him to a deep threat after Jacoby Myers' addition. and that's the role he's expected to start out at in 2026. Again, that deep role, very hard needle to thread. I think that it's very challenging to end up having a significantly boom fantasy season in that spot because you're basically playing off of efficiency. Your model citizen for that is going to be 2023 Brandon Ayuk, where his like yards per reception were out of this world. I think he had 1,300 yards and like 8 touchdowns or something. So that would be like best case scenario in my opinion for Brian Thomas. He is very important because he like draws coverage and is like a reasonable threat. But I still think that he's going to be challenging to. I think he's going to be a challenge to roster, to be quite honest, this season. At times, you're going to have him on your roster, but you're going to be uncertain when to play him. I'm going to skip this one because the Ravens did add a veteran wide receiver. They added Chris Moore. Shout out to Adam Levitan. He has reposted or retweeted or quote tweeted a couple of my things recently. Malik Nabers not expected to start on training camp pup, does not guarantee full participant in practice immediately. Team is optimistic for week 1, but remains a coin flip. The video I saw today, I think he's playing. So we'll see. Could be a generational value. Good news on AJ Barner and Torrey Horton. They did not land on training camp pup. They have both practiced too, so that is good. I'm not going to get caught up in the Jeremiah Love and Algier like rep splits. I mean, I think to start the season, they will probably do like a Gibbs Montgomery type of thing. And then, by mid-season or so, they start ramping up Jeremiah Love more, giving him more work, letting him do more just to, pad the stats kind of as the season kind of wears on. It makes sense for them to not this season just give him like 80% of the work because, one, we don't see that very often for rookie running backs, but two, like they're not really in a spot where they're going to be winning games. So why would we want to absolutely burn him out? I still think he's going to be a good fantasy player for a lot of the season. It's just that I don't think that he's going to be like a Bijan level in year 1. All right, moving on. George Kittle is healing fast. The team seems optimistic about George Kittle being able to play at the start of the season. Again, I think he's a smash at ADP. The doctor has said that he's healing fast and that he's like way ahead of schedule, essentially. Matthew Stafford and Devontae Adams are probably going to miss some of training camp, but it's all scheduled, so don't worry about that. If you get an alert that says, "Hey, Matthew Stafford's not practicing," it's fine. They have a schedule. If there's something that changes, if there's something like, "Hey, he's injured," I'll let you know. But for now, I wouldn't worry about that. It sounds like the Puka Nacua could also still get disciplined by the NFL. I don't think this would end up impacting this season anyway, but just something to keep in the back of your head. Maybe enough to tilt you towards Jamar Chase at the beginning of drafts over Puka. I actually like Puka above Jamar Chase in most situations, but yeah, if I'm worried about that, I would at least swap those two guys. Moving on, Ryan Flournoy seems like he's the clear wide receiver 3 for the Cowboys. We just need to know what kind of rotation they're going to deploy there. They also suggest that Kevontae Turpin isn't going to play that much wide receiver this year, so I think that's pretty big because he was the guy that was usually rotating with our friend Ryan Flournoy. So I'm all in on Ryan Flournoy. I think he's a great talent in general. I think he's a good wide receiver handcuff if something happens, or let's just say the Cowboys defense is really terrible again and they just decide to throw like crazy. We've seen a Peyton Manning level situation happen before where 3 receivers got 1,000 yards. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think that he's the third target in the offense. I will draft him in pretty much every format actually right now. It sounds like Amari DeMarcado is the running back 2 for the Chiefs with Emmett Johnson as RB3. It's kind of expected for rookies. Emmett Johnson could carve out a role if he proves himself. But again, a lot of times the job of an RB2 is like pass protection, like stuff that you want. Like a coach's son would be like, hey, you're going to do pass pro and you're going to do all the dirty work. And, that takes time for rookies to be able to perfect. So we do it time and time again where we think the rookie running back is going to get the job, but it's actually the veteran that does. Josh Downs is going to get reps on the outside per Shane Steichen. So again, I keep saying this, but he's an ADP smash. I think that Josh Downs is going to have an incredible season this year. Really need to fix my nose, by the way. I'm like I just got back off of a plane and now I'm like losing my mind being back. Chris Brazzell was dealing with knee soreness and now he's actually injured, which means that Xavier Legette is likely going to get that wide receiver 3 role. Bill Huber thinks that if Marshawn Lloyd gets hurt, Damian Martinez might be the front runner to have that spot. Obviously, we talked about Trey Benson and James Conner potentially getting into that role as well, but they have Damian Martinez, who had a really strong prospect profile coming out and fell in the draft. I think to personality purposes, opportunity for them to potentially give Damian Martinez a look there. Jacoby Brissett is going to be the quarterback to start the season. We know that already. George Holani was the first running back with the first team, and then Jadarian Price took reps with the first team as well out of the first practice. That has happened every single day since their first practice. It's been George Holani as the first running back. So at some point, we have to believe what's happening on the field. Maybe 2 weeks from now. We'll see. I think he's a good dart. There's not very many good darts to throw in round 18 at running back for best ball drafts or late rounds for even redraft. I think George Holani is not a bad dart to throw. Sounds like Jordan James was getting RB2 work behind CMC at practice, and then he got injured. I talked about that a little bit already. I don't have to keep going on about Kayshon Boutte. I do like Kayshon Boutte. There's a lot on him, actually. I just keep reading so much. Locked On Commanders, this was interesting. They said that there's a new team doctor who's very conservative, so and then basically like we might see players take longer to come back from injury. So something to keep in the back of your head when you're drafting Commanders players. Okay, Eli Raridon. I said this earlier. He's playing in 2 tight end sets with the starters with Hunter Henry. And if they don't sign a vet, which right now it sounds like they're not going to, he is live to do quite a bit of stuff in 2 tight end sets. And then if Hunter Henry, who used to get hurt all the time, gets hurt, I mean, he might be the best positioned rookie tight end, to be quite honest, this season. Tucker Kraft is likely to get an extension any day now. Christian Kirk got injured, and he has a calf strain now. And he was supposed to be the starting slot, or at least was in a training camp battle, which means now Dejon Stribling has more opportunities to get playing time. Ricky Pearsall practiced in full, one of the first few practices at training camp. That has now changed. We'll get into him in a little bit. Marvin Harrison got injured on the first day of training camp, and then he was actually back yesterday. So not anything that seems to be very concerning. He's dropping a lot of passes. That's not good, but for now, he's okay from injury. Greg Bell wrote an article where he talked about George Holani and Jadarian Price. Basically, George Holani is first in every running back drill and the RB1 for most of the first team 11 and 11 work. So it's the same usage that he had in the spring. His pass protection and receiving have earned the staff's trust. Jadarian Price is alternating with George Halani, but Seattle is maximizing his reps by using him with all three quarterbacks on three separate units, the first team, second team, and third team. They're trying to develop his pass game stuff. He dropped 2 passes, ran the wrong route. Then he rebounded Sunday with 2 good catches. He is getting opportunities, but he has not overtaken Holani yet. And then Emmanuel Wilson was not mentioned at all in that article, which makes me believe that he is not going to be that involved with the first team, maybe other than goal line type of stuff. Again, John Keim mentioning Stephon Diggs off the cuff when talking about potential receivers that the Commanders could add. I'm skipping some things because I've talked about some of these items already, but I just haven't I didn't get to the tweet yet. I just remembered it and I mentioned it when I mentioned the player earlier. James Conner hasn't been in team drills yet, but he's also not on the PUP. There's a chance he's on the trading block. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to be up to James Conner. If James Conner wants to leave, they'll give him that option. If he believes that he could actually get playing time somewhere else, which I think he could. It's just a matter of if he wants to leave, and then they'll decide based off of that. Stephon Diggs is not going to be a Raven. Initial plan is for Devontae Walker to get a larger opportunity. Again, I say initial plan because initial plans change. We're going to see some gadget work from Zevion Thomas, and if he produces on those touches, Ben Johnson won't be afraid to deploy him more. DJ Moore got backfield snaps last year. Again, I talked about that earlier, but it's good to see more confirmation in subsequent articles about that. Daniel Jones fully cleared, good to go. There was an article in The Athletic from John Machota hoping for a year 2 breakout from Jaden Blue. Again, consistent drumbeat that he is probably that RB2 or at least complimentary back. They mentioned kind of their core offensive players with Ryan Flournoy and Brevin Spann-Ford as part of that core. I wouldn't care about BSF as a fantasy asset, but I would say that he has some skills that I think could take away from some snaps from Jake Ferguson, making Jake Ferguson less viable. And I think Ryan Flournoy also makes Jake Ferguson less viable. I am not into Jake Ferguson. That is a guy I'm definitely fading for this season. Skipping some things that I think are less relevant. The Josh Jacobs situation has no timeline for resolution. It has not been wrapped up by Brown County District Attorney's Office so far. So something could still happen there. Shout out to Adam Levitan who shouted me out, I guess. Vrabel, based off of how I read this, he did a Q&A. They asked him about Kayshon Boutte and trading him and stuff, and he basically didn't dismiss it, but he was like, hey, he's had a good training camp. So could still get traded. Grant Cohn, who is known for being a hot take artist, kind of, basically said that the 49ers will have choices to make with Demarcus Robinson, Jacob Cowing, and Christian Kirk, and basically saying hey, it's possible that Christian Kirk gets cut. Anyway, everything that I keep seeing is that DeJon Stribling is a dude and that all these other dudes are getting injured and other stuff. So I think Stribling's going to play a big role early in the season and probably for the full season as long as he can stay healthy. We shouldn't be worried about Tucker Kraft for week 1, even though he went on training camp PUP. Alec Pierce is starting out on training camp PUP. That's one to watch. He could leak into the season. There were some things from the GM that said hey, he might be back in a week or 2. I think we need to see it first. Chris Brooks, who's battling with Marshawn Lloyd for RB2, is on the NFI list. I don't have any more details on what exactly happened, but it is notable that he is not practicing, and yet Marshawn Lloyd is practicing. Travis Hunter is going to play extensively on offense and defense. It's kind of a lie. It's just a matter of how extensive he plays on both sides of the ball. I just wanted to point out that this article like says that he's going to play extensively on both, but then it says like, but we don't know how much. So it's important to always read the entire thing to make sure that you get the full context of what's going on. Um, so we got confirmation that the Chargers tight end rotation is something that no one really knows about. The rotation of Charlie Kolar, Aronde Gadsden Jr., David Njoku is key for the upside of Gadsden. Yep, that's true. Each tight end is expected to play a role this season. So, in my opinion, it's going to be hard to see any of those guys do anything. I'm still going to draft Gadsden in situations because I do think he has the biggest upside. And you never know. What if Njoku gets hurt and then it's like, all right, well, now every pass down is basically Aronde Gadsden or something. But it does seem like it's going to be gross. And maybe just when they're projected to lose, you can put in Gadsden. But right now, it seems like it's going to be gross. Rams tight end situation is kind of messy. Also, Tyler Higbee's getting first team reps, which I think I kind of expected in the back of my head because it's like, hey, he was the tight end one for most of the season last year until he got hurt. Then he came back. Parkinson did well, and he was never fully right. So I think that doesn't really impact Ferguson, though, because I think he plays a completely different role. He plays like the slot tight end. Moving past my own like conjecture and trying to just put like news out there. Eli Raridan continues to get first team reps every single day. That's huge. Oscar Delp has an opportunity to get more playing time in 12 and 13 personnel because they view him as like the only like legit inline tight end. So that's big for him. He could always carve out a role. So Marvin Harrison's injury was a rolled ankle, but again, he was back at practice yesterday, so he should be fine. Bills insider Sal Capaccio believes Josh Palmer is fighting for a roster spot, and the top 4 wide receivers are DJ Moore, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Skylar Bell. So that's interesting. Dan Pitcher, the offense coordinator for the Bengals, basically said that they're scheming things with specific players in mind and mentioned Eric All again. Again, Eric All keeps popping up. He's a guy that they have to scheme plays for because they know that what he brings to the table allows them to do a lot more on offense than what they've historically been able to do. I think it's the drumbeat is consistent on Eric All being a factor, and he is also fully cleared heading into training camp. Very strong drumbeat on Dejon Stribling, who basically, he continues to grow and gets praises for everything. I think that this is wheels up, especially with the Pearsall information that we're going to get to very soon. Browns will play a lot of 11 personnel with a combo of Jerry Jeudy, Denzel Boston, Casey Conception, and Isaiah Bond. And I think by the end of the season, you're probably going to see a rotation of just the last 3 guys, and Jerry Jeudy's probably going to be out of it. And we also saw a video of Jerry Jeudy, like, basically say, hey, I prefer Deshaun Watson at quarterback. And guess what's going to happen? Deshaun Watson will play quarterback for a little bit, and then he's going to be terrible. They're going to move on. And then Jerry Jeudy's not going to have a rapport with Shedeur Sanders because he basically hitched his wagon to a guy that's not going to play for very long. And then we're going to see the last 3 guys, and that's what's going to happen at the end of the season at the very least. Tank Dell avoided the pup. He's going to be practicing. We don't know exactly how much he's practicing. It sounds like he's not doing team drills, but he's doing like individual drills. There's a lot of smoke out there on Keenan Allen to the Colts. We've been hearing it from various reports for a long time now. I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen in a week or 2. People have messaged me about this, that there's like some insider info somewhere about it, but I do think that the Shane Steichen relationship, I do think that there's something to Keenan Allen just saying like, I don't really want to do all of training camp. I'll just join the team in like 2 weeks. Give me some more time. I don't have to go through this like initial install period stuff. I think he's going to be on the team very soon. David Lombardi said Jordan James practiced for the first half, didn't practice for the second half. No word on him yet, but he's been running back to begin this training camp again. He fractured ribs, something we heard about today. Going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks. I still think he's live to be the RB2 when he comes back from that. That is not as debilitating as an injury. Like, you can have broken ribs or whatever, and it's not, when you come back, you're going to be fine for the most part. It sounds like the Raiders aren't going to sign any veteran wide receivers, so the young guys are going to have to figure that one out. Uh, Travion Henderson is showing some improvement with his vision and generally looks decisive when he's running. That's good to hear. They weren't really in pads when all that stuff was happening, but it's still good to hear. Chris Rodriguez, we'll get to him in a minute. I'm not going to spend too much time on him. Wide receiver 3 battle for the Raiders is one to watch between Jack Besh, favorite. He's the favorite. Dante Thornton and Malik Benson, who is the dark horse, or a veteran, which again is unlikely based off of all reports that I've read. Man, this nose is crushing me right now. A projection by Zach Berman, who is the Athletic Eagles writer. He says, basically the hype for Tank Bigsby is going to grow at camp. And my thought process on this is that Tank Bigsby looked great on tape last year, and I think he's the clear handcuff to Saquon. He should be going much higher, in my opinion. And also, we'll see what ends up happening with Saquon. Is he going to be back with the team long term after this season? I mean, it really comes back to how he adapts to the new offense. It also depends on what ends up happening with this team overall this season. So we'll see. Yeah, Chris Rodriguez, I'm not going to mention him because we're going to talk about him very soon. Zachariah Branch has a chance to start at the beginning of the season. I'd still bet against it, but I do think that he's going to be very involved at some point in this offense. Maybe not week 1, but by week 5, I could see him at least getting gadget work and then later in the season getting a bigger role. So he seems like a good draft target, to be quite honest. There was some speculation on like, hey, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Deebo Samuel, and like matching the teams up for all of those guys. I'm not going to really touch on it because I don't think it was like a real. I think it was just speculation and not like a real report. We've already talked about the Bills. Nothing's changed there. Bucky's at training camp. We're going to know more about that after I report later today. There's another outlet. The team website was talking about James Cook having this like pass down work that they're assuming he could take on potentially. That would be the 4th different outlet that we've seen mention that about James Cook. If all that happens, he is like a clear top 5 running back this season, like no questions asked, maybe even top 3. They talk about Dalton Kincaid and team hoping to increase his role, which has been a steady drumbeat, but I am a little bit skeptical at that. We'll see what ends up happening for the season, but I'll keep you guys updated. Chiefs want to operate more under center this season based off early training camp reports, and they want to shift to a power run game from under center, which performs better. Article from ESPN that was talking about Quentin Johnston and just kind of mentioned like, hey, Ladd is basically like the clear wide receiver 1. And like Quentin Johnston, great things have been said about him, but that he still needs to prove himself as like a consistent outside receiver. I had a lot of information on this that I wanted to throw out there, but it's like, I think Trey Harris does a lot more for this offense than Quentin Johnston can do. Like Quentin Johnston can, if they go in 2 tight end sets, Quentin Johnston can do like the underneath work, but then you're sending your best player, Ladd, deep because one of those 2 guys have to go deep. Whereas with Trey Harris, he does the deep stuff. He also is a really good run blocker. And so you end up in a spot where like you can maximize Ladd better and the rest of the offense better with Trey Harris. I don't know. I obviously Quentin Johnson is like odds on favorite. I just think by mid season, maybe you see something change with the team. We'll see. Keeping going. Alec Pierce is close and a week or two away from a return to practice. Again, do want to say this: he hasn't had a chance to practice at all this offseason. And so when people are talking about, hey, is Alec Pierce going to be better? Is he going to get more work this season? Is he going to do different things, or is he still just going to be a deep threat? And my answer to that is yes, he's going to do the same stuff because he has had zero chance to improve. Like this whole offseason, he has not done any football stuff. So he has not run slants. Those are the types of things that you need to be able to do and work on and actually be able to run routes to do and perfect. He's not been able to do that. And so I just don't see it happening for him. I think that Josh Downs and Tyler Warner are the way that I want to play the Colts offense this season. Mitchell Evans got injured. It seems like it was a rolled ankle, so he should probably be fine in a few weeks. Chris Bell might be back sooner than we think. I'd still say maybe like, you know, October, November timeline, but it sounds like the team wants him to potentially be a factor this season. Separate beat reporter, but they also gave us Mike Washington RB2 vibes by Sam Gordon. Keyshawn Booty, 4 days in a row of being like a top player at camp. That's awesome for him. I'm trying to go fast here, guys. We've got so much info. Um, Basically, every wide receiver for the Patriots is rotating with the first team except Kyle Williams. Kyle Williams is just basically he's you should drop him in any format. I don't think he has any upside for this season or even in the future locked into the team, and I just don't think he's going to play very much. Ramondre left practice early yesterday, but it seems like it could have been just like him throwing up. Um, Staying tuned on that to see what it is. But yeah, he, one big thing about Ramondre though is that he's been the first running back up every single day, basically. So trying to move fast through this. Building on the spring, Rashid Shaheed and Sam Darnold have kept up the chemistry and rapport in training camp so far. The goal is for him to be much more involved in the offense. I think that's huge. I think there's a lot of opportunity for him to do stuff. They need someone else to take the pressure off of Rashid Shaheed, and he could definitely get like 800 yards this season. I wouldn't be surprised. Um, it's just a fit type of thing. Brock Purdy talked about Dejon Stribling. He said the dude has proven him to all of us that he's reliable and we can trust him. I have a lot of trust in him right now. Again, drumbeat on Stribling is high. Jordan Tyson is ready off the hamstring. I'm pumped up about that. He was a full participant in practice today. So that's huge for him. Chris Brazel, we know, is injured. The Cowboys said they have plans to try to keep Pickens long term. It's kind of interesting. The Cowboys are potentially interested in trading for Max Crosby still. So something to uh, keep in mind. I'm gonna skip the Tank Dell thing because there's more on Tank Dell in a minute. Chris Olave might get extended in the near future. Alvin Kamara sounds like he had a discussion with Mickey Loomis about his role and his contract. So, in my opinion, like, why would he come back if the role didn't sound like something he wanted to do? I think he's probably going to be a factor in the pass game at the very least for the team this season, which limits the upside of Travis Etienne. Jordan Tyson, they basically said like, hey, he's fine. He would have been fine to practice. We just held him out, wanted to be cautious with him. So Josh Downs is basically punting his contract situation to next year, which I think is smart. I think this is going to be his breakout season. And it sounds like he feels the same way. So he doesn't want to sign a contract right now when his value will be higher next offseason. Everything on Jonathan Brooks is positive. He looks great in all facets at camp. He said he wasn't full speed in at OTAs, and now he's saying he is, which is very important. And then Canales also agreed with him that he looks phenomenal, basically. Um, Travion did get reps with Drake May, but it seems like Ramondre has clearly been the RB1 to start camp, and Henderson's been working with the second team offense at times as well. Ramondre led most team periods. Henderson did catch one of two targets and ripped a long run off the left sideline behind the second team offensive line. He looked more comfortable reading zone blocking. Also, um, for all reports, I think Ramondre is the back to own right there. It doesn't mean in best ball formats like there's definitely a situation where Travion's like insanely good at some point, but it would I think it would take an injury or a lot of fumbles from Ramondre for that to happen. Patriots' most used wide receiver trio is rotating positions between Pop Douglas, AJ Brown, and Romeo Dubs, and then Booty is the first off the bench, but primarily used as X with an expanded route tree, and everyone else is just kind of like rotating in as well. GM Chris Ballard addressed signing a veteran wide receiver. He said, "We'll evaluate current group and talk through names like Keenan Allen, Debo Samuel, and Stephon Diggs. We keep hearing Keenan Allen's name. He was the first name mentioned. I think they're going to sign Keenan Allen within the next 2 weeks. We'll see." And I also don't think that Josh Downs will be heavily impacted as opposed to other people who do think that. So I'm just going to let you guys know. GM of the Commanders did not completely dismiss a veteran free agent addition at wide receiver. So again, Stephon Diggs could be there. We'll see. I think that's where he's going to go. Jalen Noel, people were scared yesterday that he was on the NFI list, but it sounds like it was a short term thing, and he should be back very soon. So no worries there. All right. Now we have this like crazy Liam Cohen situation that I was like seeing yesterday. Um, and I wanted to make sure everybody got to see this. So basically, Liam Cohen said, "Hey, I texted Parker Washington the other day." So again, Liam Cohen texting Washington first. And I don't remember exactly what the question was, but the response back to Liam Cohen from Parker Washington was that he was ready to kill. And then Liam Cohen in this clip also goes on to talk about the chemistry that Parker Washington has with Trevor Lawrence, which he has also mentioned in previous interviews. And then he also talked about the contract extension for Parker Washington. He said whether he signs pre-training camp, during training camp, or not at all. Um, Again, that means that they've probably offered an extension, and it's just a matter of like hammering out details to figure out what the right situation is. Team wants him back. So that's just again more feathers in Parker Washington's cap. They want to have him long term, in my opinion. Then Liam Cohen, in that same interview, talked about Bashal Tutin and Chris Rodriguez. He said that he basically did the airplane sign and said that he's seen Tutin's ascension and that he had a great spring. And then he talked about Chris Rodriguez and how efficient he is. And then he also went on to say like efficiency is really important at running back. So a lot of people are reading into that and saying like, okay, like he's mentioned efficiency and then he said it's really important to be efficient. And so you're going to put two and two together and say Chris Rodriguez is the RB1. What I would say to that is that Tutin's also efficient. Like that's what he's been. He's also getting the practice reps above Chris Rodriguez because Chris Rodriguez is coming back from an injury. So I think that this is very undecided, and I have more tweets on that very soon. Um, yeah, then Liam Cohen also said that they're basically going to be an 11 and 12 personnel team again. So there's not much that I foresee changing from that perspective. They're going to have three wide receivers on the field very, very often. Uh, then Liam Cohen went into detail about what his favorite play is and began to describe each wide receiver's role in that situation. So he was saying, okay, what happens in the situation is we're going to go 3 by 1, which means, and we're going to have Brian Thomas as the ISO player out on the opposite side of the bunch. And then Parker Washington is going to be the deep middle of the field. And that this is a dagger concept. So that means that BTJ is running deep. And then Parker Washington is the guy that's going to do the in breaking route. And then Jacoby Myers is doing middle of the field stuff too. So you have a 3-level threat. It's like BTJ is deep, Parker Washington's intermediate. Usually the one that gets the ball on this dagger concept, and then Jacoby Myers is like kind of underneath middle of the field. Um, he also mentioned that was like somewhat of a play that they did to get Trevor Lawrence his 4,000 touchdown yard play that season or last season, and then I actually like found the clip, and this is the play. So Brian Thomas went deep, and then boom, dagger concept with with Parker Washington being the in breaker, roughly like 20 yards down the field, and boom, they hit Parker Washington there. So essentially, what he did there is he said, "I'm my favorite play is to call this play that sends Brian Thomas deep to clear the defense out, and then Parker Washington is the guy that's going to get the ball on that play." So I think that's big. Again, not trying to be like so deep in the weeds on this, but everything that I keep seeing and hearing and thinking through from Liam Cohen himself is basically pointing to I love Parker Washington and I want him to be a focal point of our offense. And he just literally talked about his favorite play being a play that was designed for Parker Washington. Um, he also talked about Travis Hunter, and he said we have to be smart and protect him a lot of times from himself because he wants to do everything, and so we have to be diligent and intentional about his workload. Which he was talking about being a receiver. On the Insider Pod, Cameron Wolf mentioned that if healthy, the Panthers believe that Jonathan Brooks can be the lead in the backfield. At the very least, he's going to share the backfield if he's healthy. So I think that's huge. We keep getting information that sounds like he's going to be that he has an opportunity to be the lead. Um, Malik Willis had guys down in Jacksonville for a few weeks. Malik Washington, Greg Dulcich, and Jalen Tolbert. Again, the person that I'm drafting out of any of these is probably Greg Dulcich, just because tight end is, I mean, he's going to be a top 2 targeter in this offense, and tight end is very barren at some point. The vibes for Trey Benson stay in Arizona doesn't seem great, but at least he's giving special teams a shot. So he's doing special teams work. He did actually do 11 on 11 later that day. I still think he's going to be the odd man out. Ryan Poles had a big comment about Luther Burden. He said, "If there's a guy that I'm really excited to see, really excited about, it's Luther Burden, just because of how much he's grown from the day he walked in this building. You can feel the fire inside of him, and I'm excited to see that show up." Again, he's going to be the short to intermediate yards after catch like option. I think that's huge in this offense. I think he'll play a lot of that Amon-Ra St. Brown role. I want to be in on Luther Burden. Some insiders for the Bears said that they'd bet on him to get 100 receptions. I wouldn't take that at face value. That's a shit ton of receptions, but um, that just tells you the intention that they see from the offense being like, hey, we're going to get this guy the ball a lot. So I'm excited about that. Ladd says that he's 100% healthy and excited to practice. That's good because he was missing from part of OTAs. Sounds like Eli Raridan is getting first and second team reps. I've talked about this already. They also think that he's doing well enough in practice to where they don't need to sign a veteran free agent. Kellen Moore was asked in depth about the running back room and Alvin Kamara's role, and he basically gave a nothing burger answer, saying like, "Hey, all of the opportunities in the running back room will be decided in training camp." Aaron Rodgers wants to unleash some fantasy cheat codes by going under center and doing motion more. So that's interesting because it's something that they didn't do as much of in the past couple of years, probably because of Aaron Rodgers, but now he's willing to do it in his last season. So that'll be interesting to see. I think that offense might be somewhat underrated this year. Okay. Chris Rodriguez. So he was fully cleared. Um, he did individual work today, and he's not doing teamwork. Again, I think that leaves the door open because we don't know when he's going to start doing teamwork, but that leaves the door open for Bayshal Tutin to receive more reps right now, which I think is huge for a guy that's really young, and trying to prove himself. So excited about the door being open for Bayshal Tutin to really take on that RB1 role. Michael Penix, he did not do 11 on 11 work today, even though everything was saying that he would do it coming into training camp. So that's interesting to watch. And then Tua also actually is missing practice for a few days for with like a back injury, but he should be fine. Again, I think this is Tua's job to lose. Dan Quinn said Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt added 7 to 8 pounds of muscle. He said the running back will be a very competitive group. Run after catch as a point of emphasis, which obviously you would point to Rashad White, but again, we'll see what ends up happening. So, I don't need to talk about that again. I've talked about him enough. An update on Tank Dell. He's still not doing teamwork early in camp. Um, Understanding how much he can do is important to me because, we just don't know. Like, you can look good in clips on Twitter and be fine, but that doesn't give us an indication of whether or not you're able to do that consistently day over day and whether your body can handle that. So, I'd love to see a fully healthy and explosive Dell, but again, he needs to be able to do all of those crazy things multiple days in a row, and that's how football works. So let's see. Brian Robinson left practice early. I don't have an update on that yet. I haven't checked my Twitter in a while, but just something to watch. They don't have any depth behind him, so if we hear like, hey, they're looking to Najee Harris or something like that, then that will give you an indication of whether how bad the Brian Robinson situation is. Tucker Kraft should be out there sooner than later, which matches other reports, and there's a good probability he plays week one. He's going to play week one. Don't worry about that. Liam Cohen also talking about Parker Washington again, saying, I think he's ready to take another step in his career. Chris Brazel is going to miss 8 weeks, and that's big for Xavier Legette. I've talked about him ad nauseum. Travis Hunter competed at both on offense and defense today, and he took more defensive reps than offense as expected, but he did take offensive reps with Trevor Lawrence. Jordan Tyson was a full participant in practice. Good to hear coming off the hammy. I'm still very in on him as like the leader of this wide receiver rookie class. I'm huge on Jordan Tyson actually. I think his role is just really good. He's going to be the underneath intermediate guy, and Chris Olave is going to do intermediate to deep type of work. So I just think he's going to be more of like the PPR scam. Like even if you don't play in a PPR league, you're going to get a lot of points out of a guy who's just more focal to the offense, like playing in that underneath role. And there was an ESPN article that basically talked about their roles like that. So I'm very bullish on Jordan Tyson. I also think he's just really good. He just needs to be healthy. Uh, Steve Smith talked about what a new normal may look like for Roma Dunes. I encourage you guys all to like listen to that. But basically, he was saying like, dude, it takes some time, but you just got to kind of learn how to play through like injuries, like screws in your foot, like all sorts of stuff. And people can do it. I've done it. I did good with it, but also there's times where it doesn't feel good. So I just think it's a high variance situation. We need to hear more, see what's going on at practice, and be able to make decisions on whether or not we want to target him. Kamara was a full participant on day one, and he took first team reps as well, and split with Travis Achan. But we don't know exactly what the split was. I probably get more information on that. I'll listen to Nick Underhill or somebody later today. John Shipley's article said Bayshal Tutin was the most impressive offensive player today, showing explosiveness, and he got the bulk of the first team reps. Obviously, Chris Rodriguez didn't participate in team drills, so that also helps. Long way to go. We don't know when Chris Rodriguez will be in team drills. So again, that opens the door for Pearsall Tootin. One thing I'm looking to learn more about too. So we didn't hear this. We know that Travis Hunter rotated in on defense and on offense with the first teams on both sides, but we don't know who he rotated in for, and that's what I want to find out. I'm going to do some digging tonight to see if anybody writes something about that, like, hey, he was in with Brian Thomas and Jacoby Myers, or he was in with Parker Washington and Jacoby Myers, or something like that. That would be huge for us to know. Um, this was just the Jags beat people talking, but they feel like the running back room is Tootin's room, but that Chris Rodriguez might get more work to start the season. Actually, it would sound exactly like how the Zach Moss and Chase Brown thing worked out. They also feel that the team actually doesn't know who the starter is right now. But they also mentioned that they will find out if Tootin is the future this year, and that could be a factor. Like, they want to give him more work because they believe, like, hey, he could be the future of our team, whereas Chris Rodriguez isn't on a big long-term contract. So Chris Rodriguez did individual drills and no team drills. Again, something to keep an eye on. Travis Hunter did team and individual drills with both the wide receivers and cornerbacks. Cohen seems to have a very detailed and intentional practice schedule for Travis Hunter specifically, based off of reports. Zachariah Branch operated as wide receiver 4 with the second team today. There's plenty of time for him to get back out there. Brian Robinson did not return to practice after coming up lame. Kenyon Sadiq is back in action after missing OTAs. And per Zach Rosenblatt, he's expected to have a role right away in the offense for the Jets. They've mentioned it as a complementary piece to Mason Taylor. We do need to know how much he's going to play in 11 personnel with one tight end as opposed to 2 tight end sets, because that's huge. Can't just be a compliment to Mason Taylor. We need you to be like, Mason Taylor should be complimenting you. So we got to see how that works out. And we'll find out more during training camp. Joe Burrow talked about Eric Hall and basically said, like, hey, he's good. He's going to play a big role for us. So the drumbeat on Eric Hall keeps getting louder and louder. Marshawn Lloyd was healthy and participated in practice and team drills, all sorts of stuff. Again, just has to stay healthy, but he could be a complimentary back. Jonathan Brooks seems like he's passing all tests with flying colors. He's doing full speed cuts and pads. He had the run of the day today. We need him to stay healthy, basically. John Keim wrote stuff about the Washington Commanders receivers and basically said Washington could sign free agent Stephon Diggs, who has drawn interest from multiple teams. Again, mentioning and linking of Diggs to the Commanders. I think where there's smoke, there's fire, and we're very close on that. We are not going to know the running back split for the Saints between Travis Etienne, Achane, and Alvin Kamara until much later. We do know Kamara is going to get first team work. That's all we know right now. He's going to take some first team work. I think that Travis needs to fall a little bit in drafts in order for me to be interested. He needs to be going closer to David Montgomery probably than where he is. TreVeyon Henderson had some good pass protection reps yesterday, something that we need to see him continually do. It's good to see him do it one day, see if he can do it for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. He was a good one in college. Didn't have a good season pass pro last year, but again, with rookies, sometimes it takes a year to be able to like adjust to the pro level. Marvin Harrison Jr. had a lot of drops yesterday, and so far in camp, Michael Wilson seems to be coming down with all the catches. Just something to watch. It's something that one of our data charters, Zach Swales, actually mentioned last year that like there seems to be this mental aspect to the game from Marvin Harrison Jr. where like he just gets down on himself. Like there's times where the ball will hit his hands or something and he drops it, and then he like just lays on the ground for a while and like sulks basically. And so now I'm just like, it seemed like he's just kind of in that world, and we need to see him be able to get himself out of that. Zachariah Branch, this is big. Yeah, he was doing things with the second team, but he did beat AJ Terrell on a vertical route for a big play today for a touchdown. Again, that was against the top cornerback that the Falcons have, so I think that's pretty big to hear. Um, the Bengals did under center play action plays with Eric All today at tight end. That's exactly the reason why he's so key to the team. Let's see. There was this tweet. I'm trying to figure out where it went. I need to catch you guys up on this Ricky Pearsall situation, but I'm trying to find where all of this went. Okay. All right. So Nick Wagner says Ricky Pearsall is dealing with knee swelling related to the PCL injury he suffered last year. Team says all options are being explored and there is some concern. Okay. So now we need to take a step back. How many weeks ago was this? I don't even know. It was about 2 weeks ago. I saw this video of Ricky Pearsall working out. He had what I called a brace, soft brace on his right knee. And I said, hey, for a player who needs to be/stay healthy, I don't love that Ricky Pearsall has a brace on his right knee. This is the same right knee PCL sprain that nagged him in 2025. I got made fun of for that by David Lombardi. He's like, you cover football, and you don't, and you know what? Good on him. Like, I really didn't know what I was talking about. I was looking at it. I'm just a random person observing what's going on. I have had my own knee injuries in the past from sports. So I just kind of thought that it was a big deal, but maybe it wasn't. Then we get this Nick Wagner report that says all options are on the table. And, you know, Jeff Mueller has this tweet that says much more concerning than this for Ricky Pearsall. PCL injury leads to joint laxity, unstable joint, leading to shear force across the joint during impact/high load activity, which is cutting, running, etc., that cause swelling and irritation. Not a quick fix, and it's been an issue since December/January, and he's had this injury 3 times. For a PCL, if there's still instability and they've already tried rehab/PRP, then surgery would be the answer. That would cost him all of 2026. So it's very possible that Ricky Pearsall misses all of 2026. That tweet was in response to my tweet, which said, this is why I was concerned about the workout video of Ricky Pearsall with a sleeve or soft brace on his knee. To me, it signaled something was off. And now we hear swelling, which compression helps with, right? If you're wearing that brace, it's providing that compression. Again, I think that this is not good news for Ricky Pearsall. My follow-up tweet to this is Christian Kirk's missing time. Ricky Pearsall's out. Like, this is a Dejon Stribling Bull situation. He is probably going to play a lot this season, in my opinion. Now that this is all going on. And last but not least, let's watch this clip of Malik Nabers. He looks completely fine striding it out. He looks completely fine getting the ball. I don't see anything wrong with him. And I talked to a doctor to like observe some of the clips out there, and they were like, "Yep, looks totally fine." So my apologies to everybody on Malik Nabers. It sounds like he looks like he is fully ready to go. There might be more information that comes out later today about how he's feeling, all sorts of stuff, but like his stride looks completely normal to me as an evaluator of talent. I wheels up, man. Price is lowest it's going to be right now than it is later. So if you can still nab him in round 3, round 4, wherever he's going, do it before it goes up to second round. Second round price, I might actually be out, just like worried. You know, the opportunity cost there for a guy coming off a knee injury is still like high comparative to like Drake London, who I think is just like a really good player. But maybe before that, I don't think I would still be in. All right. That is all of my news. Let's see if there's chat questions that I should answer. Man, there's a lot of people that commented for once. Not a fan of anyone in Nathaniel Hackett's offense. Yeah, I completely agree. I'm not going to do anything with that offense for the most part. I appreciate Zane choosing positivity, but glad Lombardi getting clowned for trying to dunk on you about Pearsall a couple weeks back. I don't care, guys. It's fine. I'm gonna say my opinion regardless. So that's just who I am. Fractured ribs. No, yeah, just fractured ribs. I'm not worried about it. I think the return timeline's like 2 to 3 weeks. So that's plenty of time for like the rest of training camp or preseason or whatever. I think he'll be totally fine. Are you expecting to see Jordan James in those preseason games? Yeah, sure. I think he'll play in preseason, maybe like the second week. I'm not that worried about it. It's not like it's like a hamstring or something like that. Like it's not going to impact performance once the bone heals, which takes a couple of weeks. Just speaking from experience, he should be totally fine. Yeah, Beck is going to nuke a bunch of the Arizona players for fantasy. That's for sure. Thank you for all of the shout outs here. Packers got to get Braylon Allen. I don't know, man. We'll see what ends up happening there. Do I think Jalen Coker will have a breakout year? Breakout is relative, right? Like, can you have 800 yards? Sure. Do I think he's going to go absolutely nuclear and get like 1,300 yards? No. And like that offense isn't going to throw for enough yards for two guys to have 1,000 yards. So that's the main concern with Jalen Coker. I think he could be a good 800-yard receiver, and that's actually paying off at his ADP. But I don't think that he's going to be like some going gangbusters this year unless Tech gets injured. Yeah, that Nabers clip did look good. This show should be on almost every single day. I was out of town, but now I'm back, so I'm back and ready to do all this stuff. Yeah, Eric All is definitely more valuable to the Bengals than he is to fantasy. That's for sure. That could change, but that's what I think for right now. How much will it hurt Josh Downs' fantasy value if the Colts sign Diggs, Keenan, or Debo? I don't think it matters very much if they sign Keenan or Debo. I still see Downs doing like we need the route share to be there, and I think the route share will be there regardless if they sign Keenan Allen or Debo. If they sign Stephon Diggs, yeah, I'd be really worried. I know the 49ers weren't looking to bring back Debo last week, but obviously things have changed now. Do you think he's logical for the 49ers with all these injuries? I do, actually. I could see them bringing him back now, especially given like all the lobbying from the players internally. And this is the reason why these veterans are waiting. It's like opportunities come out of nowhere, and now there's a market. So for Marv, I honestly can't change the scenery, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, he might need to change the scenery, that's for sure. Cam Ward said Wandale has a key to his house. Well, that's great to know. I think that Wandale is going to be a beast this year comparative to Carnell Tate just because of the lack of time to throw, and they're going to need to basically chuck it underneath. Any more news on Commanders running backs? I will get more news on that probably today, and it'll be in tomorrow's report. What are the odds we see Watson return to pre-2020 form? Is he looking good at camp? I need to observe some of the camp footage today on the Browns. I've prioritized like certain situations and teams. I was really into the Jags stuff, so that's why I haven't gotten to it yet. Naylor Buzz, nothing yet, but there could be later today. I need to review some of the tape and some of the information that I'm seeing there. All right, that's everybody. Thank you guys so much for all the questions. This was the longest tight 10. It's actually funny. Someone reached out to me on X and said, "Hey, you haven't done anything in a week." I've told him that I was on vacation. He was like, "Well, I'm looking forward for the 2-hour show that you end up doing." And lo and behold, I did a 2-hour show. So thank you guys again. Really appreciate it. Like, subscribe. You can find me on X at Denani Zane, The Cut Up Show on YouTube, The Cut Up on Spotify and Apple. If you have questions, reach out to me in DMs. I'm going to be on a bunch of different shows coming up soon. All right. See you guys.